Welcome to Inheritance Solutions for a Diverse Community with Richard Hall. Join us as we delve into strategies and insights that ensure your legacy is secure and your loved ones are cared for.
Hey everyone, welcome into an all-new episode of Inheritance Solutions for a Diverse Community with Richard Hall, the founder of Bottom Line Lawyers. I am your host, Mike Leon. Richard combines extensive legal and real estate expertise. He's been helping clients with estate planning to protect their family's future. Joining us as well in today's episode is paralegal extraordinaire over at the firm, David Pereira. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about when and why an estate plan should be updated, especially after a major life change. Gents, it's good to see you guys as always talking about this topic that I think a lot of people neglect and they leave it until it's too late. So Richard, let me start with you. What kind of life events usually put someone in a position where their estate plan, it no longer reflects their current life situation?
Well, thanks, Mike, for having us today and looking forward to this. Listen, there's a number of things that can happen. A birth, a death, a marriage, a divorce, honestly, even changing a job can lead to a problem with a estate plan. So think of anything that's a significant change in your life, and that has the potential for having an adverse effect on your existing estate plan. So in any of those cases, you should immediately undertake a review of that estate plan with an attorney. And in addition to that, you should just check always every 3 to 5 years on your estate plan.
David, let's start with, I would think, is maybe the most common ones, which are marriage and divorce. And those can change, obviously, legal rights overnight. So what should people understand about how those changes, those life changes affect wills, trusts, beneficiary designations?
Yeah, those are going to be the two big ones, that's for sure. Let's talk about divorce first. So, fortunately, the trust that we put together have a provision in it that if you get divorced, that the divorcing spouses immediately taken out from the interest of the non divorcing spouse. And so that becomes important. But what about all the other assets? Sometimes you have retirement plans that they have an interest in, and you got to make sure that all of those things are taken care of in a divorce. Otherwise, something happens to you, you pass away, and all of a sudden your ex-wife is getting $100,000 out of your retirement plan. So that is something that's essential. Some trusts will handle that, others won't. Some powers of attorney handle that, and some won't. So it's really important that you review those things. The other thing is about marriage. Well, you had property on the date of marriage that was probably your separate property, like let's say you own a house, and how that's going to be affected by now getting married to someone who has no interest in that house. And are they going to create an interest under community property laws in California? It's a very complicated issue. And so the best advice there is if you have one of those major events, you need to pick up the phone and call a good lawyer.
Speaking of another major event, Richard, let me turn to you about kids, having children, right? And what that does. So a child enters the picture, let's say it's birth or adoption, blending families like we've talked about before. What parts of the estate plan usually need the most attention in that regard?
Well, it's interesting because I'm glad you used the phrase estate plan as opposed to a trust, because the provisions that affect children and their inheritance generally occur within a will or a different document in the estate plan, not the trust. So one question is, who's going to raise the children if you both pass? And, we all believe we're going to live forever. And the expectation is that generally you will have a long life and things will go well, but it doesn't always work that way. And if, husband and wife are in an airplane and it crashes, who's taking care of those kids? And if you don't designate that, a court's going to decide, and they're going to decide based on the familial relationship, not on the person that you want to raise your children. So I'd say that's a really important aspect. And then as to things go normal and you pass, but you have children that are still minors, who's going to manage their money? Or if you find, like I've seen with a number of cases, someone who is in their 20s, early 30s even, may have other things on their mind besides managing finances. And so sometimes we arrange for a bequest not to become effective until a delayed age, 25, completion of college, age 30, whatever. So those are all pieces that need to go into the estate plan as well.
Yeah, David.
The complications of that situation involving minor children is like what Richard was pointing out, but I want to be a little bit more clear, is guardianships must be handled by the power of attorney that is done or the will. Having it in a trust has absolutely no value and won't be looked at. And so it has to be real understood that when you're looking at the big picture and there's minors involved, that there are documents outside of the trust that have more value than the trust itself.
David, we talked about, Richard mentioned at the beginning about even job choices that sometimes people don't, think about those things. So, how simple is a job change or even joining a new business, major financial shifts? How does that affect the way the assets should be structured in this plan?
Yeah, so what's going to happen is, sometimes, you have stock options with your old employer that were a particular way, and then now you're with a new employer, you might have stock options. Have to be handled differently, different retirement type of plans, and even something as simple as an employer-provided life insurance policy. All those things have to be looked at when you make a job change, and failure to do so may have the wrong person.
Richard, let me ask you about moving into, let's say you buy a new home or you acquire additional property. That creates obviously new planning considerations. You can tell us if it doesn't. What should California homeowners out there listen for? What should they check to make sure that the documents still line up with their real estate?
Well, anytime there's a change to real estate holdings, a sale, a purchase, a trade, a tax deferred exchange, any of those things that happen should be run by your attorney to make sure that the documents say what they're supposed to say. You deal with real estate professionals, they're great. You deal with estate, the folks who actually make the transfers, they're great as well. Escrow and all that sort of thing. But they're not focused on what protects your trust, and you need to be focused on that. So it's important that when you have any change in real estate ownership, that you actually have that reviewed by your attorney to make sure the documents that were executed are consistent, because the hobgoblin of an estate plan is when a estate document says one thing and a deed says something else entirely.
Speaking of review, David, we've talked about beneficiary designation, in a previous episode. A lot of people tend to forget about those. What issues tend to arise when the accounts that we talked about, like the retirement fund ones or even life insurance accounts, they haven't been updated in years? What are some of the issues that tend to arise there?
Yeah, you're going to have most likely going to have the wrong person designated as a beneficiary. I mean, we had that recently where the ex-wife was listed on the retirement plan for the husband, and they're reaching out to her. Well, what do we do with this? Uh, and that just creates a mess. So you have to look at those issues each time, and if this whole episode is all about these different events that are taking place, divorces, marriages, job changes, you have to look at them all of the time. Something like that happens. Make sure you have the right people there. Otherwise, you create a mess.
Yeah.
And, the last thing you want to do is have your ex-wife get a $200,000 uh, benefit of some sort, and that you wanted your kids to get.
Right. Richard, let me piggyback on that. So, for somebody out there, maybe they haven't updated their documents in a long time. For whatever reasons, what are some signs that their plan is outdated, even if nothing dramatic has happened within their life recently?
Well, certainly if they have a health change, they need to take that into consideration. But in general, if the documents are more than 5 years old, they ought to be reviewed. If you've had any kind of life change at all, they ought to be reviewed. If you have kids who are now the age of majority, it ought to be reviewed. Maybe it's time to make one of them a trustee or give them some other role. If you have parents that are aging, then you want to take a look at that as well. If you have any significant new relationship, that's important. So there's a myriad of things that can occur in your life that would require you to take a look and make sure your estate plan is current. I'm not trying to say that no matter what happens, review your estate plan every 28 minutes. That would be nonsensical. Nobody's going to do that. But it would be naive to experience significant life changes and not think it would have an impact on your estate plan. And we don't want to have someone caught up short because they thought it wasn't important, but they didn't know. I mean, the reason you go to an estate plan attorney is because they know something that you don't know.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you for the time and insights as always on all these episodes. We truly appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
And thank you to everyone out there for listening to this installment of Inheritance Solutions for a Diverse Community. If you want to learn more, connect with Richard and David and the team over at Bottom Line Lawyers. Do me a favor, visit bottomlinelawyers.com today. Before you go anywhere, hit like, hit subscribe, leave us a review and comment, or share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. See everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.